dawn of the early 20th century, Washington State, the city of Seattle, and the surrounding communities flourished and expanded as the economic boom of the late 1800s carried over into the new century. Bellevue and areas east of Lake Washington prospered as logging and agriculture took hold and settlers from far and wide came to work the land. The surge of new residents in all these communities increased the need for social services, and groups like the Salvation Army were there to provide assistance. Another organization that stepped up to help was the Seattle Fruit and Flower Mission, which began operating in 1907. The goal of the mission was to distribute baskets of fruit and vegetables, along with other staples, to families in need. The members met in smaller circles, discussing ideas and planning for fundraising events. This was the forerunner of the Seattle Milk Fund. In 1911, two women from Hunts Point, Ruby Bilger Davis and Ida C. Curtis, attended a circle meeting in Seattle. Shortly thereafter, they, along with 13 other women, formed the Hunts Point Circle of the Seattle Fruit and Flower Mission. This first circle would expand in the community to include dozens of volunteers who were eager to help, giving their time and resources to assist less fortunate families throughout the area. The Roaring '20s brought great changes across the country, with prohibition and women's right to vote at the forefront of social evolution. And here at home, the Mission and Hunts Point Circle continued their good works, giving over 5,000 quarts of milk to the needy. In 1927, the Circle changed the name to reflect the expanding ranks in the East Side communities and became the Overlake Circle. By the following year, that circle included three groups: Hunts Point, Medina Evergreen, and Beaux Arts. As the 1930s opened, the harsh economic realities of the Great Depression were setting in, and needs in the community were greater than ever before. Each year during this decade, the Fruit and Flower Mission delivered more than 50,000 half pints of milk for needy children. The Overlake Circle also made its first sizable community donation, purchasing the first resuscitator for the Bellevue Fire Department. In 1934, after careful consideration, the Overlake Circle decided to branch out on its own, and the Overlake Service League was born. 1938 was the first year for the popular Well Baby Clinics, which provided preschool-aged children with preventive health measures. Local doctors and nurses donated their time for checkups and administering vaccinations. That same year, the League began delivering milk goats to disadvantaged farm families. And in 1939, Overlake Service League established a thrift shop right on Main Street in downtown Bellevue. This would be the first home of several and a key element in serving the underserved on the East Side. As the 1940s rolled in, so did the escalation into World War II. 1940 was the year the first bridge was built across Lake Washington, linking Seattle and the East Side communities and bringing an influx of residents to the new suburbia. By 1942, OSL had 5 circles, and within 2 years, that number had doubled to 10. With the end of the war, the economy began surging upward. Bellevue Square was built, becoming one of the first suburban shopping centers in the country. In 1945, war bonds purchased by the League were cashed in and helped establish the first OSL Scholarship Fund. June of 1947, the Overlake Service League is officially incorporated, just 36 years after Ruby and Ida spearheaded the Hunts Point Circle. One circle was completed and another began anew. As the needs of the community grew, so did the size, scope, and outreach of the East Side circles that comprise the Overlake Service League. The 1950s brought a wave of change throughout the United States and abroad. The city of Bellevue incorporated in 1953 and began annexing neighboring settlements to spur the growth towards thriving urban metropolis. 1950 was the year Overlake Service League hired its first paid social worker, cementing the bond between the organization and the recipients of services. 1955 saw the League establish its educational grant program. A young woman and young man were given $500 each, based on need. This was the foundation for the grants program, and OSL began partnering with the Bellevue School District to identify students in need of assistance. That same year, OSL donated $1,000 to help with the initial funding of Overlake Hospital, and in return, the hospital named OSL to their executive board. By 1960, Seattle was building up to host the World's Fair and Century 21 Exposition, and the United States was gearing up to take the lead in the space race. Bellevue and the East Side communities continued to grow by leaps and bounds. The 1963 opening of the Evergreen Point Bridge, the world's longest floating roadway, triggered waves of new development all around Lake Washington. Meanwhile, the Overlake Service League continued to expand the circles and the outreach of help and social services. A popular fundraising activity during this period was the OSL Haunted House, which raised thousands of dollars for the general fund. The 70s were memorable for many reasons, including the Apollo moon missions, the founding of a little company known as Microsoft, and the election of Margaret Thatcher, Great Britain's first female prime minister. Within the expanding borders of Bellevue, the need for assistance continued to increase, right along with the population. In 1972, Overlake Service League reached out to Medic One with a donation of $1,000. This money helped purchase a vital communications link between the ambulances and the hospitals. That same year, OSL started a program providing eye exams and glasses to school-aged children based on need. 1979 brought the launch of new programs, including the Globetrotters Travel Adventure film series, which would go on to raise thousands of dollars for the organization. The League also began partnering with local merchants for the School Clothes Voucher Program, which helped provide kids in need with new back-to-school clothing and supplies. What a decade the 80s turned out to be. Mount St. Helens, Reaganomics, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Steady economic growth continued throughout the Pacific Northwest, and year after year, more people began to call Bellevue home. Needs for social services were on the rise, so the outreach from the Overlake Service League and its volunteers became even more important. 1981 was the year the thrift shop moved to its fifth and current location, inside magnificent Bellevue Square. And thanks to the generosity of the Kemper Freeman family, the yearly rent for the space is set at $1. That's right, $1. In 1986, OSL commemorated 75 years of service in the community. The following year, OSL opened its first standalone office. Until then, all social service activities were conducted from private homes. This office would become a cornerstone where the services the League provided could be administered, and a center of operations for volunteers. The 1990s ushered the U.S. out of the Cold War and headlong into the Internet era. The global tech boom reverberated across the entire East Side, and Bellevue was growing up and altering the skyline view. The decade also brought many achievements for the Overlake Service League. In '96, a total of $16,000 in educational grant money was awarded and $25,000 in vouchers distributed for new back-to-school clothing. The Clothes for Kids program continues to provide $50,000 each year to underserved youth in Bellevue. 1997 was a big year for auctions. More than $65,000 was raised, partly to fund a remodeling project for the thrift shop. A ribbon cutting and grand reopening on November 20th was attended by many local dignitaries. In 1998, the League's Roaring Twenties auction raised $120,000 for its newest program, called Partnership for Independence. That same year, $25,000 in educational grants went to Bellevue High School seniors, and a $1,500 scholarship in the name of Kemper Freeman Sr. was awarded to a third-year student at the University of Washington. 1998 was the first year for the Spring Break Box Lunch program. designed to provide Bellevue students in Head Start and free and reduced lunch programs with breakfast and lunch items while on their break. The following year, the program was renamed Break Time Mealtime, expanding to all grade levels and to assist during midwinter break as well. During the late 90s, OSL updated the organization's public image, introducing a new logo, which depicted a family of 4 and included the tagline, "Because there is a need." The league also premiered a new theme song, co-written by Emmy Award-winning composer Hummy Man and award-winning Seattle songwriter Sue Ennis.
It starts with a moment when you step outside yourself. It starts with a question: how can I help?
The year 2000 arrived right on schedule, despite all the Y2K worries, and the new millennium ushered in a renewed sense of hope around the globe. Then, the dawn of September 11th, 2001. The day that changed everything. For everyone. Everywhere. The Bellevue skyline continued its upward spiral as the city evolved into a high-tech hub and became home to new internet startups. But the dot-com crash, the housing bubble, and the credit crisis made for a volatile economy. Throughout the decade, Overlake Service League continued to expand the reach of their good works in the community. Direct social services became even more important, and programs like the Emergency Food Bank were expanded to help bridge the gap that families experienced during difficult times. Established programs grew yearly, with Partnership for Independence, educational grants, Adopt a Family, Break Time Mealtime, and the Thrift Shop being the key elements of the League's outreach. And to help fund these vital programs, OSL featured a wide array of fundraising activities, including the annual Step Up to the Plate Luncheon, the Drive for Dreams Golf Classic, the highly popular wine auction, and many others. A lot has happened through a century of service in the community. Ida and Ruby would be proud of the continued good works by the organization they helped get started. The Overlake Service League is just one spoke in the wheel of community service, partnering with Bellevue merchants and other Eastside agencies to support at-risk youth, families, and individuals in need. The League continues to focus its services on our neighbors in Bellevue without the help from city, state, or federal funding. In celebrating a century of hope and help, OSL honors the past, thanks all the members, donors, and volunteers who have helped along the way, and sets sight on the next 100 years of assisting in the Bellevue community. For the Overlake Service League, 2011 brings the dawn of a new century.